I'm here in Portugal this week to film a perfect example of one of Ferrari's most overlooked GT cars, the effortlessly beautiful 456 Gran Turismo. Why Portugal, Damien, I hear you ask? Well, since it's murky and cold in the UK at the moment and quite depressing, I wanted to ensure that any episode that featured the 456 GT was going to be sunny and on the best possible roads. And I think you'll agree, I've delivered. Welcome to Drive Every Ferrari, and welcome to the Ferrari 456 GT. It's not hard to be bewitched by the beauty of this car. It's so understated. This is a manual gearbox. It boasts a sparkly blue Le Mans paintwork and tan leather, and that makes it pretty much the perfect 456 in my eyes. It's that svelte Pininfarina body designed by Pietro Carmodella, the long bonnet, that powerhouse of a V12 that makes this car such an underappreciated modern classic. And of course, it's a 2+2, so you can take 4 people in extreme comfort. Dismissed by many as bland and uncharacterful, this is anything but. And this week I'm going to take you through the full story of the 456 GT, its history, its quirky features, and what it's like to drive today. Four-seater Ferraris have permeated the range since 1948, and in many ways they are as important to the company as sports cars. Most recognise this 1948's 166 Inter as the first. In 1960, Ferrari launched the 250 GT 2+2, the first four-seater made in significant numbers, 957 in total, and featuring a 3-litre V12. Ferrari brought us the 330 GT 2+2 in 1964, a smart if a little plain Pininfarina designed 4-seater powered by a 4-litre Type 209 V12. The first series was the controversial Chinese Eyes 4 headlight design seen here in a beautiful blue colour. The second generation had 2 headlights and was used by Enzo Ferrari himself. It was made up to 1967, where it was replaced by the 365 GT 2+2, which was considerably prettier and swoopier. Next came 1971's 365 GTC 4. I mean, just look at it. Sadly though, it only lasted 2 years. It was replaced by the awful-looking wedgy 365 GT4 2+2, followed then by the 400 GT, the 400 Automatic, 400 GTI, and 1985's 412 Gran Turismo. The 412 lasted until 1989. A 4-seater would not return to the Ferrari range until the 456 Gran Turismo in 1992. It was first shown at a gala dinner in Brussels on the 24th of September 1992 to coincide with the 40th anniversary of Ferrari's relationship with Jacques Swatters, Écurie Francorchamps Belgium's motor racing team. The first 456 was painted in the new colour of blue Swatters. Now you know where the name comes from. Which is particularly odd if you think about it, since Swatters was known as racing in red and yellow. The full public launch was at the Paris Motor Show in October. Many saw the new car as a brave move. The world, after all, was still in deep recession. The 456 GT was produced from 1992 to 1997, when it was replaced by the facelifted 456M GT, M for Modificata, and this was eventually retired in 2003. You can tell a Modificata mainly from the front. They tended to have round fog lights right here in the grille, slightly different bumper treatment, and most importantly, they didn't have these vents in the bonnet. In the end, 3,207 456s were produced, 1,936 GTs and 1,271 GTMs. And it was also available for the first time in the USA, where many of these now reside. And just look at it! This was the first 2+2 V12 since the 412 in 1985, and its aluminium bodywork saw hints of the Daytona. It's such a subtle, undecorated shape that it doesn't even really look like a Ferrari at all. It's not clear who was copying whose homework, but then there's no getting away from the fact that the 456 closely resembles the Ford Probe. It was touted as a modern Daytona, and of course there are hints in the long bonnet and particularly the rear with those 4 taillights. But in my eyes, the 456 is anonymously beautiful. It's the thinking man's Ferrari. It's the connoisseur's choice. Most people haven't heard of them, and even fewer of them actually desire them, which is why prices have remained perfectly reasonable. You get independent suspension and front and rear anti-roll bars, and a driver-controlled switchable shock absorbers, which continually monitor the road surface, the steering angle and speed and acceleration to ensure better grip and traction. The 456 was initially available only as a manual before they then offered the slushy auto option. The use of a transaxle gearbox helped to balance the weight of the car, and once the auto was an option, it was reckoned that over 70% of people went for that. Thankfully though, this car is a manual. This paintwork, as you can see, absolutely gorgeous in the Portuguese sunlight. I love the fact that you've got that long bonnet. You've got 2 big scoops in the bonnet here, which are available on the original car. Pop-up headlights, of course. Nothing could be cooler than pop-up headlights. I love the fact that around here, you've got that proper Ferrari grille offset here, you can see in chrome, and just here you've got some vents which go through. That takes the airflow through. There's the beginnings of more aerodynamics coming through on the 456, and that's also reflected here where you've got a vent just behind the front wheel, alleviating engine temperature and helping to cool that mighty 5.5 litre V12. I love the line that comes through here from the top of that vent, goes all the way along the driver's door and all the way around the rump of the car. At the rear of the car, you've got those 4 tailpipes making that delicious creamy noise. About the only thing that people are agreed on is that the rear tail lights is probably the only part of the design that I would say is questionable. The 456 GT received the first brand new V12 since the flat 12 boxer engine. Ferrari's chairman at the time, Luca de Montezumolo, called it a sexual organ. It's 5.5 litres, that's 5474cc to you and me, and it features Nicocel treated alloy cylinder liners and a Bosch Motronic fuel injection system. What that means is 442 brake horsepower, and that's good for 5.1 seconds 0 to 60 for the manual and 5.4 seconds for the automatic, and a top speed of 187 miles an hour. Not bad for a car that weighs 1690 kilograms dry. Call it 1800 with fluids. So where does that 456 name come from? Well, in previous cars it refers to the number of cylinders and displacement. In the 456 though, it couldn't have come from a more geekier place. It refers to the swept volume of a single cylinder in cubic centimetres. And anyone who knows that fact should probably be avoided at parties. And now, since it's a GT car, let's have a look at the boot. And as you can see, there's a decent amount of space here to go for cross-continent jaunts. And he also had, of course, the option to have tailored fitted luggage in here, just like this. Now that's the Ferrari way. Here we are then, inside the cabin of the 456 GT. And of course, as you'd expect, it is a beautiful place to be. These Italians know how to design and put together a luxury interior, Connolly leather, I believe, but these seats are incredible. Look at these beautiful bolstered cushions, built for comfort, not for racetrack performance. Behind me, I've got 2 pretty decent recessed rear seats with a nice central handrest there for being able to put items in, and of course, the de rigueur double ashtray. Up front, and it is of course a symphony of 90s Ferrari design. 2-tone dashboard, black leather on the top to prevent reflections in the windscreen, and then tan leather underneath. And you're immediately at home as soon as you get into it. It feels like you could do hundreds and hundreds of miles, which is of course exactly what you want from a GT car. Ahead of me, I've got this thin rimmed steering wheel, the classic first version before they brought the airbag model. I've got 2 main instruments chrome ringed ahead of me. I've got the speedo on the left hand side, and I've got the rev counter on the right, which revs to a red line at 7,250 RPM. This is of course a slightly lazier, more refined motor. Just like you get even in the modern GT cars, I've got 3 grills here in the center top part of the dash, one for angling towards me, one to the passenger and one to the rear occupants. In this case though, they're square. Of course, modern day ones in things like the 812 Superfast, they are round. I've also got very familiar 355 switchgear developed for this car and obviously then used on the 355. To the left, I've got the window controls. I've got those same Fiat sourced stalks, which are a little bit rubbery and quite plastically. They're not particularly nice, but then neither are they on the 355. Tooty tooty Ferrari horn in the middle, and then in the center part of the dash, this is where you've got all your main controls and dials. We've got a whole fleet of analog dials in the middle. You've got your water temperature, oil pressure, fuel, and a clock. They look particularly cool, makes it feel like you're inside an aircraft. Just below it, you've then got this control, which goes through the 3 settings of the shock absorbers. You've then also got fog lights, rear demister screen, you've got the petrol cap popper, and you've got a button to open the boot. Just here we've got the main ashtray for front passengers. The radio, interestingly, is located down here between the gear stick and the air conditioning controls. That's quite unusual, but it does make it quite easy to access. The heating and cooling controls section is down here. This used to be sticky, had the same problem as my 355, but it's now been perfectly fixed. And this little control here, which is very prone to stickiness, is for the electric wing mirrors. And then behind here, you've got quite a few dished sections for putting all your knickknacks and things in. There's, if anything, too many of those. Conventional glove box here, and then above me in the roof, we've got some reading lights. Overall, it's a very comfortable driver-focused cockpit, but one where you can easily turn around and chat to your friends or family in the back. But of course, the main talking point, the gearbox. It's a manual 6-speed gated H-plate. It is a delight to use. You get none of that recalcitrant low temperature issue that you have in the 355. This one is silky smooth. Lest we forget, it's a 90s Ferrari, which means you get a proper key. None of this keyless nonsense that you get today. Now, this car is a keeper for the owner, Vitor. He is going to keep this car forever, and as a result, he's lavished some attention on it. He's had it reupholstered, he's fixed all the sticky bits problems, and of course, he's done the dashboard, which can, in hot countries, shrink and then pop away. So, to be honest, it feels like I'm sat in a brand new 456. But that's enough chat about the outside and the inside of this car. You watch Drive Every Ferrari, so you can see me driving Ferraris. So that's exactly what I'm going to do now. Here we are, folks. This is it. I am driving a Ferrari 456 GT, a 5.5 litre V12 in the mountains in Portugal. Now, don't say I don't bring you treats on this channel, because this is a genuine one. Now, this is the first time I've ever driven a 456, but I've always had a secret hankering for these cars. There's just something so elegant about them. You don't even think necessarily from the outside that it is a Ferrari. Now, this car is pretty special because it's a manual, and trust me, folks, the manual is the one to have. The automatic, it came later, and it just, for me, even though 70% of the cars are automatics, no, this is the one to have, especially when you get to lovely twisty roads just like the one I'm on now. Now, big thanks to friend of the car guys and owner of this car, Vitor, who has literally just thrown me the keys and said, off you go, take it for a drive on these roads. And I am extremely grateful for him for that, because let's face it, not everyone would do that. This is his pride and joy, and I can see why, because even though it's a relatively high mileage example, everything in here and everything about the way it drives is perfect. Now, what can I tell you about the driving experience? Well, the steering is relatively light, except when you're pitching into corners, but this one has the pre-airbag steering wheel, which of course is a lot thinner than that big old gaudy airbag monstrosity like I've got on my 355. perfectly weighted for roads like this. As you sweep between the bends, is firm enough to give you a feeling that you're grabbing hold of the car, but light enough to not make it too much hard work. Now, it doesn't feel like a large car when you get going and on roads as thin as this. I'm being a little bit cautious on the right hand side because obviously it's a left hand drive car. There's a lot of Armco around and sheer drops, so the last thing I want to do is plunge over the edge in a fireball. Just listen to that engine. It's such an organic thing. It pops and it fizzes. You can just hear, you can hear the mechanics. You can hear the internals of the engine. You don't get that with modern stuff. You don't get that with a pista. Wow, that's a corner, isn't it? Look at that. Oh, that V12 in this car is extremely creamy. It's soft, it's refined, it's not snarly in any way. It really just builds. The power's very linear. This is the consummate GT car. This is the car that you want to take on long journeys. It will get you there in effortless comfort. You don't really want a big spiky race engine on a car like that. You want it to be super smooth, and it really is. Look at that tight right hand bend. There you go. Just let the steering run wide. There we go. Oh, you really can't beat a naturally aspirated Ferrari V12. You also get to enjoy and stir that wonderful Ferrari H-gate, the 6-speed manual that comes in this car. There really is nothing like click-clacking your way through one of these things. I know, obviously, from experience having the 355 Spider, the same gearbox in it. It just means you work harder, it means you're more involved in the driving. And on roads like this, which is a very tight downhill series of bends, just like the tail of the Dragon, oh my goodness, and with quite the most amazing view over the valley. Look at that. I mean, there's no doubt about it, folks. This is a great day. It is a great day for Drive Every Ferrari, and it's a great day for me. When the weather's all murky in Britain at the moment, which it is, you get a bit down. I thought Portugal's the place to go. That's the sort of place, if you want to drive one of these cars, you've got to come somewhere where it's sunny and where the roads are smooth. Oh, cobbles. Oh yeah. And there we go. If I put that now into the comfort setting, there you go. We were in sport setting. There's 3 settings for the dampers in this. On the 355 there's just 2. There's soft and hard. On this one you've also got a medium setting, and it is pretty useful when you've got cobbled roads like this, like you find on the interior of Portugal. Ah, there you go. Back onto smooth tarmac, back down into sport. I thought I would like the 456, and of course I do. It's my kind of motor. Something that you don't really expect. Something that's quiet but carries an awfully big stick. But it's the way it gathers up its skirts and rockets towards the horizon that really makes you want to come back to the 456. It's just a great cabin. It's a great experience. And even on these tight, twisty roads, I mean, what do you think? Some beans? Small amount of beans. Here we go then. Second gear. Oh, you see? You see? When it wants to, this thing can really shift. So what do I like about this car? Well, obviously the looks. I'm a big sucker for subtle looks. What, big branch in the way? Easy, does it? I love the looks of this car. I just think it's so subtle, it's so elegant. I didn't used to. I used to think it was a bit dull, but now I really appreciate the lines of this car. Pininfarina and Pietro were well ahead of the curve. They understood what it means to have a gentleman's express. I love the vents on the bonnet. I love the feeling of the steering wheel, the way that it gives you such delicate responses. I can feel everything that's going on in the road. Obviously, I love Ferrari interiors, and this is a belter, just like the 612 Scaglietti. It's so finely appointed. I like the fact it's got 4 seats, so you can take your family or you can take your friends. And of course, you know what a soft spot I have for the GTC Ford Lusso. I love the visibility as well. You've got a lot of glass, you can see all around you. There's no real major blind spots, so that just makes it a lot more relaxing to drive. And of course, that engine. And what do I not like about this car? Well, to be honest, as you'd expect, there's very little not to like. I think the brakes, a little bit spongy, they don't give you a huge amount of confidence. And I think in terms of the noise that's coming out the back, even on full throttle, you don't get that scream like you do with many other Ferraris. But to be honest, I'm nitpicking because this is supposed to be a quieter, more refined, genteel Ferrari, and it does that role absolutely perfectly. So here I am at Journey's End at the Museo do Caramulo. What do I think of the Ferrari 456 GT? Well, to be honest, it's every bit as good as I hoped it would be. It's a relaxed, long-distance cruiser, beautifully appointed, luxurious, smooth, fast. It's a more refined car for gentlemen and for people who've had all the fast cars but now want something a bit more mature. Is this something I can see coming to the Car Guys garage at some point in the future? Do you know what? Yes, it is. Thank you for watching this episode of Drive Every Ferrari on the Car Guys channel. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it interesting and useful and exciting and exhilarating. I'm now off to plunder this museum's Ferrari collection and hopefully arrange some drives in the future. If you like what we're doing on the Car Guys, please subscribe, leave comments and likes. There'll be another episode next week.